Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Relix, and today we're going to actually finally go over the LA Kings season review, as well as what to look forward to going into the next season for the 24-25 season. So I know I've been pushing this off for a long while now. Obviously, the playoffs ended a whole month or so ago. It's been a long while. And then, of course, preseason's just around the corner. Everything's happening so fast. This summer's flying. The time is flying for me, and it's hard to keep up with everything, especially with the free agency and how that happened. I definitely had a burnout after that. So here we are. So this is obviously going to be my raw review here. So I'm just going to give you my information that I've seen, my opinions, my thoughts on the season, things like that. I also have all my notes here. There's a lot to go over as well. So we'll be going over a lot of things. So just to put this out there, here you go for the timestamps for this video. They are on the screen for you right now. We will be going over, I would say, the good, bad, and the ugly, in a matter of speaking, including the playoffs. We'll go over the records, both home and away records. We'll also go over the East versus the West. East and West, I should say, versus the LA Kings. Points, stats overall, season leaders, season losers, things like that. Everything all together. We're going to go over everything. And then, of course, we'll also go over a couple of the trades, the signings, and what the future roster is going to look like for this next season. So overall, everything's going to come together, and we're just going to have a little discussion here. So feel free to comment down below in the comments if you have anything to say about what I had to say here. Do you agree with what I have to say? Do you agree with some of these signings? Do you agree with my opinions? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section. We can talk about it, because it is a big thing that the Kings did with the signings this off season. I don't agree with a lot of them. However, there are some things to look forward to, and that's something that we need to discuss. So here we go. Let's start off with what I would call the good. The Kings made the playoffs for the third straight season. Yeah, we lost to the Oilers again for the third straight season, but it looked pretty bright as far as what we were trying to accomplish, and that is get some goal scoring while still improving our defense compared to last season. And then, of course, going into the season, we also thought for sure we might actually have a lineup that can compete. Unfortunately, that leads into the bad, which is Dubois. Let's just be honest. Dubois was one of the worst players, not only on the LA Kings, but one of the worst players to contract in the league. He was terrible. He did not produce at a level that we expected him to, and that actually didn't help us in the playoffs either. And so overall, our season suffered because of players like Dubois, amongst others as well, that who didn't contribute on a regular basis, if not consistent. That just contributes to the fact that again, I'm going to go over it in multiple sections, but this year we lowered our goal scoring compared to last year, which last year, again, if you guys watched last year's season, the LA Kings scored some of the most goals in their franchise history. We're so offensive, but we also gave up so much defensively. Same thing for this year. We improved in the regard of we still scored at a decent rate. Not as much as last year. In fact, 20 goals shorter than last year. But we also gave it a lot of goals, which, also led to 1-goal games throughout the season that we could have won. If not, could have had a chance of coming back and winning. So, and heck, we even blew some leads. So we got to improve on that as well. The defensive aspect is one of the biggest things that the Kings are known for. And unfortunately, they couldn't, hold on to games and get higher in the standings. Unfortunately, we still ended up with a 99-point season, which is the typical LA Kings type of season. Barely making the playoffs, if not just getting in because we have the Pacific Division spot. Obviously, that was not the case. We were a wild card. But I rather see the Kings, solidify themselves as a contender, be a Pacific Division spot, 1 or 2. I don't want to see them be the third. I don't want to see them be a wild card. I just want to see them get in and show the league that they are contenders. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. And then, of course, I'm going to say the ugly for the season for sure is the lack of consistency. The LA Kings had streaks of greatness, had streaks of bad, like horrendous streaks. We all know how the LA Kings started the road games, right? We won, what was it, I think it was 15 straight, right? To tie the NHL record for most road wins to start a season. That was great, even though we lost some home games. That was amazing still. But then we went on a huge losing streak. All of a sudden, we are not good out on the road, and we kept losing through the months of December and January, leading into the All-Star game. So things needed to improve, and in the end, we fired our head coach, Todd McClellan, and got Jim Hiller to step up and be the head coach. To me, it's not a matter of whether the coaching was bad or not. The players were the ones responsible. Players like Kempe, Fiala, Dubois, Moore, Deneau, they weren't playing the defensive game that they should have been playing. Obviously, we expect a lot of offense from Fiala and Kempe. And so, going from last year to this year, I definitely saw an improvement in their games. In my player reviews for both of them, I did say that they need to improve their defensive, game. However, continue the offense. I said that Kempe wouldn't get another 40-goal season. I just thought that was just not going to happen. But he needs to improve his defense, and I think he did that towards the end of the season. Again, starting the season this year, he still suffered on the defensive aspect. No back check. Always thought about offense, leaving the zone early. But as the season went on, he definitely improved, and I won't lie, he actually ended up being our top player, or at least one of the top players on the team. Not my favorite on the team because of his overall game, and again, that's part of the ugly, the inconsistency of not just the team but the players themselves. But I thought he did improve a lot. He led the team in points as well as assists. So, and his plus-minus rating, considering that he is on the ice for empty net situations, it actually ended up being a pretty decent plus 13. So, I'll give him credit where credit is due. So, congratulations to Kempe. But players like Fiala, too. The defensive aspect needed to improve. I know he played with Dubois quite a bit, so his plus-minus suffered more than other players. But then, like, Deneau, he's our defensive centerman. He needs to play better. He needs to... I feel like it's either him or the Kings organization. They don't realize his assets. Deneau has his best seasons when he was playing in front of the net. And most of the time this year, he was not playing that role. And unfortunately, I think the second line suffered because of it. And so that needs to change. Not to mention there was no consistency in the lineups because players like Grundstrom, Kaliev, Leferrier, they kept moving up and down throughout the lineups. The second, third, and fourth line kept changing multiple times. And I think that was a huge downfall for the Kings. The expectation was that Arvidsson was supposed to start the season with the Trevor Moore, Philip Deneau line. Unfortunately, he had surgery the day before, practically the days before the season started. And that threw everything, out the window. All the plans that the Kings had leading into the season opener, that was just ruined because of that surgery. Not blaming Arvidsson, obviously, he needed to get it done, but it didn't help. That's for sure. It didn't help the chemistry. However, as we know, when Arvidsson did come back, he played some phenomenal hockey. Not like to the highest potential, obviously, but he did play a pretty decent game. And based on his overall stats for the season, I would not complain about his performance. So I think the surgery was worth it. And we were able to, play at a decent level. We still made the playoffs, so that's not the issue. Arvidsson wasn't the issue. But again, just consistency overall throughout the entire lineup. And again, we'll get into that when we get into like player details. When I do player evaluation videos, we'll get into that as well. But these are just my opening thoughts. And then, of course, leading into the playoffs, we lost to the Oilers third straight year in a row. They, unfortunately for us, they had this stronger lineup. This year, I look at their lineup, including going into the next season as well. Their lineup is full of depth scoring as well as just overall veterans. And now they have Arvidsson on their team as well. So that's just another strong player who is now practically going to be fully healthy. I mean, he had 2 surgeries in the past 2 years. There's no reason for him not to be as healthy as can be and play at the level that we know he can. So, yeah, the Oilers lineup is just strong. It's just strong. With Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl leading the charge. They have a huge, strong forward core, as well as a D core that remains literally the same as last year. The defenseman and the goaltending from last year is the same as this year. So that's going to be an issue. I thought the Oilers are a well-balanced team, and I think they only got better. I think they only got better with this offseason. But we'll see. We'll see how things play out. Overall, though, for this playoffs against them, they had the better players. They had the better plays. Kings didn't get scoring from everybody, and there was not enough scoring from from all the guys. I felt like Kopi and Kempe were like the only ones who were really showing up to score as far as the top end players. Obviously, players like Lizotte and Lewis on the bottom. Again, I have no reason not to praise them as much as I can, because their PK skills were amazing. They're the best PK duo on the team, as well as they too were contributing on a daily basis. And I can't say the same for everyone else. I can't say the same for Dubois, obviously. I can't say the same for Fiala, Moore, Deneau. Apparently, it came out that after the fact that Deneau was playing with a broken hand. And again, if you're not winning faceoffs and you're a detriment to the team, then just be a scratch. You can't play. Let someone else play. I mean, that's why we have a hockey system, right? NHL, AHL, and ECHL. That's why we have these players signed to contracts, is so that they can step up when other players are injured. And Deneau being injured the entire time, that just doesn't help us. And I felt hearing that's a betrayal to the organization in regard to the fans, because we're cheering you guys on, and you guys aren't playing your best, or you're at 100%. It's very unfortunate, and I think the Kings suffered because of it. So hopefully they learn from their mistakes. Hopefully everything's fixed and injuries won't be an issue going into the next season. However, if I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to be very bright about this next season, considering the off-season signings and trades, but we never know. That's the parity of the league. Any team can be good, even with the same team as last year or years prior. Small tweaks here and there, chemistry, it matters between players, and maybe it just takes time for players to adapt and play with one another. But at the same time, we made a lot of additions and a lot of subtractions that may hinder the team even more. So we'll see what happens. So that's what my overall thought for now. But yeah, let's take this moment now in this video to look at the records. Let's take a look at the overall records for the season. So the Kings finished with 44 wins, 27 losses, and 11 in overtime/shootout. That is a total of 99 points on the season. Good for the wild card, typical Kings. If you actually break it down to even more details, it was actually 5 overtime wins, 2 shootout wins, 6 overtime losses, and 5 shootout losses. So, it was a pretty good season. I don't mind the overtime losses. It's better than regulation losses, right? However, the amount of times we went to overtime is pretty crazy. I mean, 18 games went to overtime. That's a little too much. That's a lot of one-goal games that probably shouldn't have been, and the Kings need to improve. And just think about all the regulation losses. There's a lot of regulation losses where the Kings lost by 1-goal games because they couldn't score empty net goals. or not empty net goals, but they couldn't score while playing empty net. And so that is literally one of the consistently bad aspects of the Kings. As far as I've been watching for the past, 12 years now of hockey, I have never seen the Kings really be a good empty net situation team. They're like, in my opinion, as far as me watching overall hockey throughout the entire year, the Kings are one of the worst teams as far as pulling the goalie, and that needs to improve, because 1-goal games are the difference between getting a point and not getting a point by pushing overtime. Yeah, we had 18 overtime games, but we could have had over 20 of them, probably, and maybe less regulation losses, more regulation wins. So let's break it down even more. Home and away records. Home record, 22 wins, which is literally half. So that means 22 wins were also on the road. 22 wins at home, 3 in overtime, 1 in the shootout, with 12 regulation losses, 2 overtime losses, and 5 shootout losses. So as you guys can see, the shootout losses all came at home. That needs to improve. You're playing in front of your fans. We have your back. You should be able to do stuff on the ice one-on-one with the goalies, especially the top end players. I noticed a lot this year in the shootout that we were very, how should I say it, easygoing, I would say, in the shootout. Players like Kopi, Kempe, Moore, they didn't really shoot to score. It just kind of looked like they just shot just to get it over with. Lack of effort is also one of the key phrases for the season. And overall, I don't deny that David Riddick is also not the best shootout goalie. That's just a fact. And so, we probably lost more games because of the fact that there was no real effort being put into the shootout. But that's not the biggest thing. Obviously, shootouts are shootouts. No one really cares as much about those. But like I said, going into overtime because of 1-goal games is just not good. Going into the away records, we have 22 wins with 2 in overtime, 1 in shootout, 15 regulation losses, and 4 overtime losses. None in the shootout. So, to start the season with 15 straight road wins, and then all of a sudden you only get 7 more on the season, that's actually pretty bad. The road looked like it was going to be the Kings' forte this season, right? But then all of a sudden you're losing all your games, and that definitely doesn't help. So again, the consistency was not there again, and I definitely think that needed to improve if we wanted to make the playoffs, which we did. But going through into the playoffs, we did go in practically losing. We lost to Minnesota in the second to last game, and then we went to overtime against Chicago, one of the worst teams in the league, in our last regular season game. Captain Andrei Kopitar even said that it's not the way they wanted to go into the playoffs, but hey, they made it, and that's what matters. And that's just disappointing, to say the least. If we want to compare our record from this year from this year and last year, we had 3 less wins and 2 more regulation losses. We had 104 points last season with a 47, 25, and 10 record. So the fact that we got worse, even though we added more to our team to make us better, is just a disappointment. And the Kings need to be better. I think going into this next season, we're not going to make the playoffs, if I'm going to be honest. The consistency is just not going to be there. Not to mention the chemistry is broken with all the subtractions and additions for the rosters. But I am expecting less goals against because of the fact of the players we added this offseason. As far as the goal scoring, I am not very enthusiastic about it. But again, like I said, we'll go into details about that later. Just to be even more thorough with the breakdown, let's go over the quarters of the year. If you guys watched my quarter season reviews throughout the past year, you guys will know there's a huge difference between how the Kings played on the road and at home and amongst the quarters. So at game 20, the Kings had a record of 13-4-3 with 1 in overtime loss and 2 shootout losses. The record at home was a 4-4-1-2, and away, as we know, were 9 straight road wins. So right there is like your consistency for your road wins. That should have been our highlight of the season. I mean, the NHL was praising us all the time, how we were always winning our games. So, that right there screams, fantastic for the road. Obviously, home, we lost more than 50% of the games, so that needed to, improve. But at the same time, if you look back at the first month of October, we actually had a lot of hard home games. We had to play, the top teams of this year prior, the Hurricanes, the Avalanche, the Jets, I think, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of hard teams. Oh, the Avalanche too. There's a lot of teams that were really difficult teams to play against, and we started off the season at home playing against those teams. So I will not say that our home record is a reflection of how we were playing necessarily, as much as we were getting difficult teams. Now, that is not to say that we can't beat them, and we shouldn't beat them. As I keep saying, any team can be great, and if teams like the Coyotes, the Sharks, the Blackhawks, Senators, if they can beat these top teams, every now and then why not us? It wouldn't make any sense, right? So going to game 41, the half season mark, that was our horrible stretch, more or less. It was from December 3rd to January 16th. We had a record of 8-5. That is 3 overtime losses and 2 shootout losses, and then of course 1 overtime win and 1 shootout win. Overall making the season 21-12-8. So at this point of the season, we're just above 50% of wins, and that's, again, not good. This is also where the season started to take a disastrous fall as far as the road games. The home record, we had a record of 3-3-2. So again, we're losing more games at home than we are winning. And then the away record, 5-5-3. And so right there is your inconsistency. We got the record. Sorry, I kept saying 15 straight wins. I think it was actually 12, right? So the road record was just not there. I'm going to have to just confirm that. My apologies, guys. The road record wasn't there. The home record wasn't there. Bringing to our season total, season home record is 7-7-5. Season away is 14-5-3. So the inconsistency is just there. We go on the road, we win some. We go back home, we lose some. And it's like the Kings need more effort throughout that time period. That is leading up to the time where Todd McLellan was fired. And it is unfortunate because I do not blame him or the goaltending. I do not blame Talbot or Riddick or Copley for their performances. I thought all 3 goalies played phenomenal. Granted, yes, it's not 100% like it wasn't their fault. There were some games where they did let up a lot of goals, but it is the forward and defensive cores in front of them that were honestly my huge disappointment for the season. Again, the lack of effort is the key phrase here, and players like Dubois, Kempe, Fiala, Moore, those guys, they need to step up more this season, and they didn't. And then, of course, you got players like, for example, like Laferriere. Coming in as a rookie, I didn't think he was going to make it out training camp. I didn't even think he was going to play the whole season, Would he have played this season? Yes, I definitely thought he would have come up from Ontario and played. But to play the whole season, I did not expect that. And to play the whole season, regardless that you're a rookie, he had to contribute more on a regular basis, and he did not. And so that's one of the players that lacked a lot of effort, and he didn't play special teams, so he needs to put in more effort. Players like Kaliev and Grunstrom, who have been here for the past so many years, they also didn't put in the efforts. Kaliev was scratched many times. Grunstrom was injured, yes, but at the same time, he didn't play on a consistent basis. He is one of those, two-way forwards that should be at least a 30-point scorer every single year, but unfortunately, that was not the case. Overall, that was just, a bad time. Then we move on into the third quarter mark. That's where I did my last season review for the Kings before heading into the playoffs. Obviously, this is now the full season review, but at that time, we went another 10-7-2. So it's not as bad considering that we had a shootout and an overtime loss. But again, there's 4 overtime games. 1 overtime win, 1 shootout win, overtime loss, shootout loss. So again, 1 goal games coming into play here that should have been, better results, bringing our season total to a 31-19-10. So we are above the 50% as far as the oh no, we're not. My apologies. I don't even know what I was thinking there. We're barely above 50% for the total wins and losses, actually. Bringing our home record for that time period to a 5-3-1, which is great. We actually finally got more wins than losses at home, but the away was 50-50 with 5 wins, 4 losses, and 1 overtime loss. So a little bit inconsistent again, going down in the road department. That was supposed to be our highlight, and then all of a sudden it just starts to crumble as the season went on. If you want to break it down even more, it's on the screen, but here we go for the season home. 12-10-6 with a season away 19-9-4. So overall, it's not looking so good, both home and away. It's slowly getting worse, right? It's not consistent enough to the point where we're winning more games than we're losing. And this is where we really started to get towards the end of the season, and we really need to make a push for the playoffs. We need to go in winning. Unfortunately, we did not go in as good as we thought we should, or could have, I should say. Finishing the season at Game 82, March 5th to April 18th. Record of a 13-8-1 with 3 overtime wins, bringing our season total to 44-27-6-5. The home record for that time period was a 10-2-1. So we did win a lot of home games during that last stretch in the last month and a half. So that was absolutely amazing, to be honest. And then, of course, the away actually crumbled, and we went 3-6. Bring our season totals, as I said before earlier in this video, to 22-12-7 for home, 22-15-9 for away. So overall, again, both home and away, we got 22 wins each. But at the same time, it's not the best season. I mean, if you're only getting half your wins home, half your wins away, there's something wrong there. We need to get more wins at home, if anything. It is your arena. It's your fans that are cheering you on. You should be trying to win in front of them. I definitely think the Kings lacked a lot of effort sometimes at home, and it just showed, as a result of the records. So at this time, I'm going to actually go over the LA Kings versus the East as well as versus the West. I already did a video on the Kings versus the East, but this will break it down even more, including the details between the teams. So if you guys would like to see this, feel free to stick around for this one. It's not as important, but there is some consistency issues that's may play a part into this, as well as going to next year. There are some teams that the Kings struggle against on a regular basis, and I do want to talk about that, as well as teams that we are expected to win and may have actually struggled against. And so let's start with the East. I already did a video on this, but we can do a quick breakdown again. Versus the East, again, this is the East teams, so 1 game home, 1 game away. For each team, all 16 teams in the East side of Eastern Conference. Our home record versus the East was 8-5-3. So we split. Not bad really, but at the same time, it's a home record. You should be able to win more games at home than not. So that's not good. And then the away record 9-4-3 for a total of more wins than losses, which is amazing. So again, the road record versus the East actually was really good. We're going into the Eastern Conference arenas and beating them in their own arena. So that's great. Shows that the Kings can, if we get to the Stanley Cup final, we have a chance to beat the East teams because of the fact that usually the Kings do good against the East. So I'm happy about that. Things that I want to discuss specifically about the Eastern Conference teams, goals and goals against, as well as the records versus each team. So we'll break it down. We'll go no particular order. I was just grabbing some information online from here and there. Let's start with the Atlantic. Let's start with Florida. The Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup champions for this year. In Game 1 at home, the Kings won 2-1, and then Game 2 on the road we lost 2-3 in overtime. So the goals and goals against 4-4. Surprisingly, that just goes to show. Look, if we made the Stanley Cup playoffs, we actually had a team that might actually have beaten the Panthers. We actually took the series, technically speaking, more than they did. 3 points for us and 2 points for them. That's just stats speaking, right? But it's not bad, to be honest. I thought for sure the Panthers were a stronger team this year, and they ended up not being better than the Kings overall. Next up, Boston. First home game we lost 2-4, and then the away game 5-4 overtime win. So again, not bad. Goals and goals against 7 and 8. So again, not bad considering it's Boston, one of the top teams of the league on a consistent basis. Speaking of consistency, the Boston Bruins lost Krejci and Bergeron, and they still are playing phenomenal hockey. So you want to talk about consistency? There you go. That's a franchise that is always consistently making the playoffs, and they always have a team that's willing to fight. Going into Toronto, first away game 4-1 win, and then home 0-3 loss. Splitting the series for sure. And again, another series where we went 4-4, goals and goals against. So you can see how the Kings are very consistent in just splitting the difference. These are some games that we should be winning, but at the same time, we're losing. I think it's fair to say that one team gets one win each. It's not to be unexpected, to be honest, but it's where we get the wins and losses, right? Hopefully we get the wins at home, which we have not, and get the wins at road would be great, but we usually shouldn't. Next up, Tampa Bay Lightning, away game 2-3 overtime loss, home game 4-3 overtime win. So both games went to overtime, resulting in, would you look at that, another 6-6 goals and goals against. How consistent is that? And by the way, if you guys haven't realized it by now, I hate the Tampa Bay Lightnings. Multiple videos saying that. Next up, Detroit home, 3-3 shootout loss, and then a away game 3-5 regulation loss. So we lost the series entirely to the Detroit Red Wings, being outscored 8-6, and that's one of those teams that we shouldn't have lost both games. They are a weaker team, in my opinion. They have been for the past so many years, so they should not have been able to beat us, but they did. Next up, we have the Buffalo Sabres. First game was a home game, 3-5 loss, and then away, we got blown out 7-0 by the Sabres. 2 regulation losses, outscoring us 12-3. I do not deny that the Sabres, they have a lineup that, or had, I should say, this past season or past 2 seasons, they had a lineup that can score a lot of goals, but also get scored on a lot. And unfortunately, the Kings couldn't capitalize on that, and unfortunately, we got destroyed by the Sabres. According to my my stats that I written down, they were actually the best Eastern team against the LA Kings, and that's just sad. The only other team that got 2 straight regulation wins against the Kings was the Washington Capitals, my brother's favorite team outside of the Kings. So we'll get into that, in just a moment. But see that the Sabres were the ones that destroyed us, it's kind of sad to see. I never really thought of the Sabres as a strong team, and they still aren't strong. They still can't make the playoffs, and their lineups are always changing. So it's really sad to see that the Kings couldn't beat them. Next is Ottawa Senators. First game was away, 3-2 win, and then at home, 4-3 overtime win. So we won the series there, outscoring them 7-5. So that's great. But again, Ottawa is one of the weaker teams of the league, so it shouldn't be a big surprise. Then, of course, Montreal. We shut them out 4-0, both home and away, for a total of 8-0 scoring. So, obviously, Montreal being the weakest team in the East versus the LA Kings. And so, they're the only team, actually, that we shut them out both times. And that is actually amazing. Considering that Montreal actually has some good players on their teams. But, I'm actually surprised we shut them out both times. I'll have to go back into the schedule to see when we played those games. But I don't think there were... I think it was during a time where we were losing games. So, big surprise there. So that does it for the Atlantic, though. Then we move on to the Metropolitan Division. And we got the Rangers coming in on the road. Or we were going to the Rangers on the road first with a 1-4 loss. And then a 2-1 win at home. So splitting the difference. But again, we were outscored 5-3. Next up, New York Islanders. Again, on the road, we lost 2-3 in overtime. And then at home, we shut them out 3-0. So outscoring them 5-3. So we flipped the New York series, literally 5-3 scoring both ways. We beat the Islanders, but the Rangers beat us. So, interesting. Next up, Carolina. At home, we lost 5-5 in a shootout early in the season. So, not surprised there. They are a hard team. So it wasn't like the Hurricanes just destroyed us. But we could have did better, for sure. We were still trying to find the chemistry, I bet. So that's not a big surprise that we lost. And then, of course, on the road, we won 5-2. Winning the series with two wins and outscoring them 10-7. And then, of course, next up, we have my brother's Washington Capitals. First home game, we lost 1-2 in regulation. And then the away game, we lost 3-4 in regulation. So again, both games were 1-goal games. And the Caps, unfortunately, were a weaker team this year compared to what we've seen in the past. And it was unfortunate. So they outscored us 6-4. Capitals definitely should have been one of those teams that we should have beat. Maybe not just once, but maybe twice. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Again, like I said, consistency was always an issue throughout the season. And the Capitals proved to utilize their opportunities, and they beat us. I do believe I had some video breakdowns of those games as well, because they are, outside of the Kings, I do cheer for the Caps as well, just because my brother cheers for them. Next up is Pittsburgh. First game at home, 3-4 overtime loss. And then, of course, on the road, 2-1 win. Equaling the season, 5-5 goals and goals against. So another consistency there for the home and away, goals and goals against status for the teams. Philadelphia, 5-0 win on the road, 2-4 loss at home. And we outscored them 7-4. No surprise there. Flyers are kind of wishy-washy the past couple seasons. So I'm not surprised that we beat them with a 5-0 shutout. But then lose 2-4, that kind of sucks because I don't think the games were that far apart. So we need to stay consistent and should beat them both games. New Jersey Devils on the road, 2-1 win. And then came home, 5-1 win for a series sweep, 2-0. And then outscoring them 7-2. The Devils are one of those teams I felt like should have been better. We could have definitely lost a game against them, but apparently they have roster issues as well that I didn't really realize until they came in and played us for I think it was the second game, that our broadcast actually talked about their issues with the roster. But in any case, that's not about them. It's about the Kings right now, and we beat them twice, and that's what matters. And then finally, the Columbus Blue Jackets, one of the weakest teams in the league. Yes, we won twice, but the first one away was a 4-3 overtime win. Second one was a 5-1 win, bringing our scoring 9-4 for goals and goals against. Again, Blue Jackets, one of those teams that we shouldn't go over to overtime. They are a weak team. No offense to Blue Jackets fans, but their consistency is just not there. Their franchise is suffering at the moment. Do I see any improvements from what they did this offseason? Not really. The consistency is definitely going to be an issue for them as well. They're just not having it right now. Rebuild, not likely. It's just they're not finding the right pieces for their team. And yet they still find a way to push overtime against us. So congratulations to them for doing that. Overall, the breakdown of the goals and goals against. At home, we scored 46 goals, 40 goals against, with 2 shutouts and got shut out once, unfortunately. So that's not good. Again, the one shutout being the Buffalo Sabres, outscoring us 7-0. On the road, we outscored our opponents 47-43 goals against. So it's not that much of a difference, but it's there. And again, gained 2 shutouts and being shut out once. So, wait a minute, that's actually wrong. We did not get shut out, did we? Oh no, sorry, my apologies. I totally misread that. We did get shut out at home. That was against the Maple Leafs. We got shut out on the road against the Buffalo Sabres. My apologies for that. So there's my correction there. So overall, the road was kind of what you expect. Some wins, some losses. Either way, kind of came out to a 50-50 outlook for the East. But the East is pretty strong. Everyone says that the Eastern Conference is the much stronger conference, not to mention the Atlantic Division being absolutely full of monster houses. But, I think the LA Kings definitely prove they can play against the East relatively well on a consistent basis year after year, at least from what I've seen. And I think we can only get better if we, continue to, find chemistry amongst the players. But sometimes, like we saw throughout the months of December and January, we just lose that consistency and we end up failing. So let's go back now to the West, the LA Kings versus the West. Our record against the West was a 27-18-2-3, with an overtime win and 2 shootout wins. We outscored the Western teams 159-127 with 3 shutouts. We never got shut out by any of the Western Conference teams, so that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. For breaking it down even more, our home record was 14-7-1-3 with an overtime win and shootout win. Yes. So not enough to double up on the wins at home, which is not the best because we want to see more home wins, obviously. But as far as the goal scoring, that's amazing. 84-59 goals against and 2 shutouts. So as far as the home record being able to score a lot of goals, that was amazing. But again, as the records show, goal scoring isn't everything. And just because we blow out one team here doesn't mean another team can't blow us out either. So a little bit unfortunate because, again, goals and goals against as far as records are concerned aren't as important. But it does show where we stand as far as how we play at home and away. Away record versus the West is 13-11-1 with 1 shootout win. So we didn't go to overtime as much against the Western teams, but the scoring was much closer. 75 goals for, 68 goals against, and 1 shutout. So it's a little unfortunate that the Kings, for how well they did to start the season on the road, all of a sudden their away record versus the West was almost even. So, the Kings' consistency was lacking there. To break it down versus the teams, though, let's go over the teams one by one. Let's start with the Central Division. The Dallas Stars destroyed the LA Kings. If there was a franchise that completely obliterated the LA Kings this season, it is the Dallas Stars. In 3 games straight, the Dallas Stars outscored the Kings 3-13. Sorry, 13-3. The Kings didn't win any of the games. Game 1 on the road, Kings lost 1-5. Game 2 at home, 1-4. Game 3 on the road, 1-4. It was a huge disappointment. Every time we went to the Dallas, I was thinking, we're going to lose. We're going to lose the game. It's not like these Stars were like one of the top-end teams all season long. They just destroyed the Kings, and it's unfortunate. The Stars do have a strong lineup. I don't deny that. But I think for sure we should have been able to compete against them much better than we did, but we didn't. Going on to Colorado Avalanche. First game at home, again, like I said, to start the season. They were, I believe, one of the first 3 teams for the season. We lost 2-5 at home, and then we won at home again 4-1, and then we lost on the road 1-5, bringing the season record to a 1-2 versus the Colorado Avalanche, being outscored 11-7. So they are a hard team, and usually the Avalanche do find ways to beat the Kings on a yearly basis. So I'm not surprised there. Going into Winnipeg now, on the road 5-1 win, at home 2-5 loss, and then on the road again 3-4 loss, bring our record to a 1-2 with 10-10 goals and goals against. So we, compared to the Eastern Conference, we're going to play more than just 2 games, obviously. So there's going to be some inconsistencies there, but I don't want to see the scoring, the goals and goals against be even, because that just means that the teams that we're going against are kind of doing their part and scoring against us, whereas they shouldn't be, because all these teams that I'm going over right now in the Western Conference, we played them 3 to 4 times. So if your scoring is equal, that more than likely we either barely won or we lost the series. And as I will actually discuss, there is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that we won the series. Only 4 of those 6 were complete dominations. But yeah, I'll go over those in just a moment. Next up is Nashville. First game at home, 1-2 loss. Away, 4-2 win. At home again, 1-4 loss. So they outscored us 8-6. Record 1-2. Again, another one of those Central teams that they love to compete. Always a up and down Central team for me. Where if it's making the division or if it's a wild card, they're always there to compete. And I think Nashville did a pretty good job. Next up is St. Louis. We went into our home game 5-1 win, and then a road game 3-4 overtime loss, as well as a regulation loss on the road 1-3. Bring our record against them to 1-1-1 with 9 goals for, 8 goals against. So even though we lost 2 of the games, we still outscored them by 1. But like I said, I don't want to see the scoring be even, because it just definitely doesn't tell the story. More than not, we want to have more goals for sure. Minnesota, one of the teams that the Kings usually have a hard time against. We actually beat them this year. First game on the road, 7-3 win. We scored a lot, actually, against the Wild. Home game, second game, 6-0 shutout. And then last home game, like I said, second to last game of the season, 1-3 regulation loss. We outscored them 14-6 with a record of 2-1. So overall, it was a really good season against the Wild. Wish they didn't get that last win, but hey, you know what? Can't win them all. So 2 of the 3 against the Wild, who are pretty competitive. That's a pretty good record. Then we move on to Arizona, one of the teams that we should completely blow out, and we did. We won 6-3 at home in the first game, 5-4 win on the road, and then 4-1 road win again. So no overtime games here. Granted, they did score quite a bit, but either way, we still won with 3 straight wins, scoring 15-8. And overall, Arizona's a weaker team. I do have hope though that the franchise now moving to Utah, and with the additions they've made this offseason, I think Arizona is definitely going to be a stronger team this next season. Heck, they might even compete for a playoff spot. I'm actually also happy that they have signed Sean Durzi. And again, if you guys have been following my videos, you guys know I love Sean Durzi when he was an LA King, and I think it was a huge mistake for the Kings to let him go. He is their official number 1 defenseman on their team, signing a long contract this offseason. So congratulations to him. I just want to give him a good shout out because he deserves every penny. And I think the Kings were idiots to let him go. So go Arizona next year. I am rooting for you. Or sorry, not Arizona. Go Utah next year. I am definitely rooting for you guys to make an appearance, whether if it's in the playoffs or just have a decent regular season where even if you're just barely outside of the wild card spot. I definitely think Utah will be a much better team this year. And then, of course, the last Central team is Chicago. We beat them 5-0 on the first game on the road, 6-2 at home, and then, of course, 5-4 overtime win in the last game of the season. Should not have gone to overtime like that, but it did, and we outscored them 16-6 with 3 straight wins. So again, we should have beat them, blowout for sure, but it was closer in the last game than not. Connor Bedard, great player. I was excited to watch him in every game. In fact, I watched him a lot this past season. I find myself watching Chicago games, even though I usually don't, because Bedard was, amazing to watch on a consistent basis. So hopefully he has a great season this next season. I think the Blackhawks made some good additions this offseason, so definitely look to them to improve from this past year. Moving on to the Pacific Division, the Vancouver Canucks to start off. 5-1 road win, 1-2 overtime loss at home, and then 3-2 road win, and 6-3 home win, bringing our record against the Canucks 3-0-1, outscoring them 15-8. If you want to talk about the Kings beating a Pacific team, I was not thinking Vancouver Canucks, for sure. The Canucks have been consistent all year in being one of the top teams, if not the top team in the Pacific Division, and yet the Kings still were able to beat them in regulation 3 of the 4 games, and in their one loss against them, it was an overtime loss, which was only a score of 1-2. That is crazy. Based on what the Canucks lineup looked like, I definitely think it was an even fight for sure. But I did not expect us to be able to destroy them as well as we did. So that was amazing. In fact, they were the weakest team against the Kings as far as the West is concerned. So, wow, absolutely amazing. Moving on to Edmonton now. Obviously, as we know, there's a huge rivalry now between the Kings and the Oilers for the past so many years. Not just inside the playoffs, but in regular season as well. And this is no different. In the first game, 2-2 shootout loss at home. Second game, we blew them out 4-0 at home. And then we went on the road twice. I do think we played them twice in a row on the road, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong, or at least it was like within a close proximity timeline. Either way, we getting sidetracked here. On the road, 2-4 loss and then 1-4 loss. So bring our season to a 1-2-0-1 record with a 9 goals for, 10 goals against. It's not like the playoffs where we actually end up losing more, but by a lot of goals and goals against. But it was consistently equal. We can say that Yeah, we lost more, but the goal scoring was there. It's not like we can't score against the Oilers. We just have to find the right chemistry at the right time. And I think the Oilers, if they get their forecheck going against the Kings, they always win. And overall, I think the Oilers are a better team than the Kings, but I think the Kings can win. So if we somehow end up in a fourth straight playoff series against the Oilers in the first round, I kind of welcome it. I think we can do it if we just find, our identity versus the Oilers. I think we can shut them down. It's just a matter of whether or not the players themselves put in more effort or less effort, especially the bottom liners. Moving on to Vegas Golden Knights. First game, 3-3 shootout loss. Second game, 4-1 away win. Third game, 2-3 regulation loss on the road. Bringing our record to a 1-1-0-1, outscoring them 9-7. Vegas is a harder team, so I'm not surprised that the record went the way it did. But again, just like the Oilers, we did get a good win. Just like the Oilers had a 4-0 win, we had a 4-1 win against the Golden Knights. So our scoring's still there. We can score against them. It's just a matter of whether or not we are able to do it on a consistent basis, which we are not. Again, we have to make sure we score some goals because the league is only getting better, and getting 3 goals a game is just not good enough anymore. Usually the typical hockey score would be like a 3-2 victory. But now we're finding ourselves looking to have to get at least 4 goals a game, if not more, to win games. So Vegas, definitely a strong team. Got to get at least 4 goals every game to win. Next up, Calgary. We split the series. Straight even, actually. 5-3 win at home. Then 2-4 loss on the road. 2-4 loss on the road a second time. And then a 4-1 win at home. 2-2 record with 13-12 goals against. So another one of those teams that were just straight across the board, 50% even. Both teams won games. Both teams lost games. Pretty straightforward. Outside of the Kachuk issue, the Flames aren't really a rival to the Kings. But overall, there is a consistent, we beat them and then they beat us throughout the years. So congratulations to them for making it an even fight. Next up, Seattle, 2-2 shootout win on the road, 1-2 loss at home, and then 5-2 win at home. 2-1 record with 8 goals for, 6 goals against. Not bad. I think we should always beat Seattle. I don't think they're a strong team personally. But overall, the Kraken are kind of up and down. They do surprise me sometimes. Next up is Anaheim, our literal freeway face-off rivals. This is one where we usually come out on the losing end. However, the Ducks for the past so many years have been pretty bad, so we should win these games. First game, 5-2 win on the road. Second game, 2-2 shootout win at home. Third game, 1-3 loss on the road. And then fourth game, 3-1 win at home. We outscored them 11-8. Just 11 goals to 8. We should have did better. We should have did better against the Ducks. Next up, San Jose. Or lastly, I should say, is San Jose. First road win against them, 4-1. Then we went home, 5-1. 3-3 shootout loss at home. And then 2-1 away win. Bring our record 3-0-0-1. Outscoring them 14-6, which should be expected. They are one of the worst teams in the league. So, not a big surprise. Overall, I am actually very pleased with the way we win against the Pacific Division. Losing mostly to Edmonton, Vegas, and Calgary. But the Central needs improvement. I think that Kings can do better against the Central, but unfortunately they did not. And that's just the way it goes. So there's the series breakdowns for the East and West. Overall, I'm kind of pleased with the way things went in both regards. But again, things could have been better. Even if it's just getting one win against each franchise, compared to getting no wins. For example, like the Dallas Stars getting 3 straight wins, just dominating wins against the LA Kings, no less. I wish that wasn't a thing, but it was. You know, take even just one win, like reverse the scores from one of those games and getting us a win. That just changes the whole outlook of what the season looks like, right? So instead of 44 wins, we would have 45 wins, you know, and the goals for would be up there, almost hitting 260. Goals against would be in the 200 and something single digits. It's a huge difference when you think about it. One of those Dallas Stars games, which was a 1-4, 1-4, 1-5. So it makes a huge difference when, you know, you have the goal scoring and goals against flipping, you know, from one another. But that's just my thought. Overall, I'm not going to get too nitty gritty about the details of the games. I just really hope the Kings would be more consistent. Like I said, you know, throughout this entire video, a lot of 1-goal games, and it's unfortunate because that's just not what we need right now. So, just to, you know, wrap this up real quick, I'm actually going to split this review just because of how long and how much information I'm just throwing at you guys. This first video will just be about the season overall, as well as how the Kings played. You know, my thoughts and opinions on how they did. The next video, which I'll put out tomorrow or the next day, we'll see. I will actually talk about more in depth about the players themselves and their statistics from last season, as well as the last year and this past season. And then, like I said, I will go into the details of who were like the leaders of the season, the losers of the season, all their stats, goaltending as well, and then of course the outlook of the team going forward into the next season with the signings as well as the trades that happened this offseason. So be prepared for that. Again, I know I've been a little lacking on the content update here, but you know, there's a lot of information that I would like to get, and I don't want to just, you know, get it and throw it out there without being honest about how I feel about it. I want to think about it and make sure I want to tell you guys how I feel with certainty, as well as is this beneficial or a detriment to the Kings, and overall what the outlook of the team is going to be like next year. So that's just my thoughts, though. Let me know if you guys enjoy this video by hitting the like button or not, and then of course, like I said in the beginning, hit the comment down below if you guys have any thoughts. Do you agree or disagree with what I had to say? And subscribe to the channel for more content, as well as stay up to date with what I have to put out next. Like I said, I'm going to put out the next video for the players for the most part. You know, points, goals, assists, you know, PK, power play, etc., etc. So we'll go all over it next video. But that's it for this one. Thank you guys for watching / listening. I know it was a lot, so thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.